your article that you wrote is called Going the Distance: Five Strategies for Maintaining Intimacy and Connection in Your Relationship. Like I said, I've been married for a little bit and I've counseled through some couples as a pastor. I absolutely loved your insight and plan on passing this along to many in the future. So let's talk about it. What inspired you to write this article?
Yeah. Oh, well, one, I just have to say I'm so glad to hear that it just touched your heart and that you can pass this
Hmm.
information along. Because part of what inspired me is seeing how hungry couples and even young people who are preparing for, a life together with their loved one, how hungry they are for intimacy and connection and being successful in their relationship. One of in my past life, I actually was an adjunct professor for a psychology department at a university, and I had the privilege of teaching and leading classes for 6 semesters. And one of the classes I was most passionate about was the intimate relationships class. And we always began the class each semester by asking all the students to pull out an index card and write down what they really wanted to learn. Why were you in this class? Aside from just needing a credit for their degree, of course. And
Right.
almost the majority of the students every year ask, like, why do some relationships fail and some succeed? How can we be successful in this and avoid all the hurt and the heartache? And that just stuck with me, especially being a child of a family of divorce. I recognize how hard it is and how I saw my parents firsthand, how hard they worked to be successful and stay together. And so sometimes the resources are hard to tap into. When we try to read books and we try to get information, we go to counseling and we really just want so desperately to connect with our partner. And so, from my experience in my profession, I have found through research that while these are not every, tried and true tactic, and there's so many other various ways that someone can maintain their intimacy, these are 5 very solid strategies to help a relationship stay healthy and intimate. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've already answered the question of who this article is written for. And I appreciate you saying that because, in our culture today, so many, like you mentioned your own story, you've seen marriages fail. I've seen relationships fail, marriages fail. And, your strategies that you mentioned in here are incredible boundaries for us to have in any relationship. And I want to get into those strategies that you mentioned. You shared 5 strategies for maintaining connection in the relationship. Walk us through these strategies and tell us a little bit about them.
Yes, I'd love to. So the first strategy is what I call shared activities, but that's through a special process called self-expansion. Self-expansion is like deep wired into us as human beings. We like to grow and to expand ourself and our knowledge and be successful. And one of the ways that researchers have found that we expand ourselves and our intellect is through our intimate relationships. And so, if you think about the very beginning of when you're dating and talking to someone, oh, it's so exciting and new. And you spend hours on the phone and coffee dates and talking and doing activities together and really soaking in these new experiences and information from this special person. And that is not just because of the butterflies and the love that you're developing, but that's also because it's fulfilling to us as a person to gather new information and experiences. It helps to round out our personhood, I guess you could
Mhm.
say. And so it's no surprise that after we've developed our relationship, we've settled down, we start to get in a routine, and routine is beautiful, but it can get monotonous. And next thing you know, like you have couples and they're just striving to find conversation. They feel like they're going into autopilot because they think or feel as though they know so much about that person already. And so one of the ways to really help develop and not just develop, but maintain that self-expansion together is doing new and novel activities, continuing
Mhm.
to date, continuing to grow, trying to not settle down into too much monotony. And while everyone thinks dating has to cost a lot of money, while going out to new restaurants and traveling to see new cultures is wonderful and a great way to expand your knowledge of the world together, It's just as easy to play games and to go on hikes and get outdoors, to go kayaking, to read books together and do puzzles. Uh, Fun nerd alert, my husband and I and another couple, I don't know who is familiar with the Pokemon game that came out on their phones years ago, but several couples in our group, we just said, hey, what is this all about? Let's check it out. And that was something fun we did for a little while, just to change up the game, to be able to find new activities and get out. And it's kind of out of your comfort zone. It's not your normal thing, but it gives you a good laugh. And whether you like it or not, it helps create a memory that you can then go back to as a couple and laugh about and share. And it helps to kind of build where you're going. So that's a really
Yeah,
important
that's
one.
no, that's good. I loved it because it's the idea of constantly learning and growing together. I'm always like trying to connect things, with our relationship with God, as a pastor, and that's the same thing as us as believers. We always are striving to learn more about Him. How much more should we be doing that in the cultivation of our relationships? So yeah, I really appreciated that. So let's keep going. What's the next one?
So the next one is social support. And on one hand, that's great to have like shared friends and loved ones and family members and people in your circle that you again get to share activities with and feel supported by, especially to know that they support your marriage and your relationship. But social support goes a little bit deeper with how you and your spouse connect and support one another. And an easy way to think about this is when life gets stressful, not if, but when life gets stressful, that's your other person, that's your helpmeet that God has given you and designed for you. So you want to be able to step into that role and provide support and resources when the stress kind of weighs down on your loved one. And so many of us think that we're being helpful in very like explicit ways. But what my article kind of talks about is this idea of invisible support. We've researched this in the psychology field and found that visible support is really awesome, but it sometimes can backfire, whereas invisible support is tried and true and is probably not going to backfire there. So for example, if I am working throughout the day and I'm stressed, I have deadlines, I'm feeling a little weighed down, I have a house to clean later, and I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not going to get off until 9 o'clock. I still have to empty the dishwasher and cook dinner, and I'm just feeling very heavy. If I were to walk in at home and my husband, which he has done this numerous times because he's just a gem in my life, but if he has just didn't even ask me, didn't text me ahead of time to ask, hey, should I help you by doing this? Which I would have politely declined because that's something I do the dishwasher best, right? Instead, I come home and it's just done and dinner's ready. And I didn't have to be asked. I didn't feel like I was failing as a wife in that moment by him having to ask me what's for dinner. He just stepped in and invisibly supported me in that way. And instead, I feel this relief when I come home because I feel supported and loved and seen. That attachment is just so prevalent right there where I'm attached and seen and cared for in those vulnerable moments where I might have wanted to be better and reached a certain standard of what I think I should do as a wife and a working woman. And instead he says, I'm here, I've got you. So that's one example of invisible support.
Yeah, so how could that have gone wrong if it was visible support?
Yeah.
Husband says, I loaded the dishwasher, I unloaded it, I cooked dinner.
Mhm.
So how does that come into play?
Yeah, so visible support might look like someone saying, hey, one of the examples I actually give in my article is like, hey, I know you're going to go on a diet. So I stopped buying sugar and I bought all these things and I've got some Slim Fast for you. Well, dang, like now there's that part of
Right.
me that feels very like exposed. I might not be feeling great about myself. Yes, it might be something that I wanted to do, but then to like have that like very visible support, I didn't get to be a part of that decision. And it just can backfire as far as like the house cleaning and chores and things. That could have been where I got a text in the middle of my already busy workday asking like, hey, there's no clean laundry. Like, where am I supposed to find this? Do you want me to run this? Well, now in my mind, I have this expectation that that was something I was going to do and I failed. And now he's having to come and ask me. And so we can get in our own head. Goes far beyond gender roles of who does what in the house. This is just
Right.
each person can have an expectation on themselves of what they wanted or hope to be able to accomplish. And that's just a reminder visibly by him having to ask me, hey, should I run the
Hmm.
laundry? I see you didn't get it done today. He's offering, he probably means nothing by it. But in my head, I'm now beating myself up and frustrated, and I feel helpless to do that. Whereas if he
Hmm.
just does it and sees that, he's a part of the team and I'm not having to worry about getting in my own head, it kind of takes out the extra stress and allows me to take in his support and his care.
Hmm. That's good. That's
Mhm.
good. So the third one, capitalization. Talk to us about that one.
Yes, capitalization. I love this because this just happens literally in everyday life.
Hmm.
When we come home and we share about our day with our loved one, we might have something really heavy or really great that happens. And instead of being on our phone or being caught up in our own world, we get to capitalize on the opportunity to connect with our spouse. And there's a few different methods to do this. What I recommend is that we use a positive, an active, constructive method. That's basically saying, hey, I'm going to stop and give you my attention. I'm going to show you that I'm listening. And I'm really going to like side with what you're describing to me. I'm going to side with the story that you're sharing. I'm not going to give my input on my feedback right now. I'm just going to be there with you in this moment. Whereas something that might be a passive or deconstructive method of responding to your partner's news and conversation is where you kind of like hijack the conversation, start
Hmm.
giving your input, or even just kind of blowing it off, which is really like deconstructive to the connection. And so if someone comes home and they want to share about like, hey, I actually like someone thanked me today for what I did at work, and that felt really good. By capitalizing on that moment, you get to really like celebrate that with your partner and say like, oh my gosh, that must have felt so good, like I'm actually
Hmm.
really proud of you, like of course they said that to you, you're awesome at that, are you surprised? Like you really like dive into that moment with them and
Hmm.
capitalize on those opportunities to connect and share as each other's best friend. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Um, Forgiveness. The tough
forgiveness.
one.
Ooh, this could be an episode in itself. So,
Right. Yeah, we could probably spend 30 minutes here, but
exactly.
yeah.
So, forgiveness is for ourselves, right? And the Lord
Hmm.
even uses, and if we look at scripture, He tells us like it's so important to forgive and to not have that wall up that prevents us from connecting and growing and having like a deeper relationship with the Lord, which,
Hmm.
like you said earlier, that mimics if we have a block with the Lord and unforgiveness, why would we not have a block with our partner with our
Right.
unforgiveness? So this one can get tricky because every relationship will go through hardships and hard
Hmm.
times. Some of the harder ones might be betrayals and infidelity and lies and deceit. And others might just be moments that create like some discomfort and a little bit of resentment that we have to work through. So there's
Hmm.
different layers of what we have to forgive in our relationships. However, it's really important, excuse me, it's really important to remember that forgiveness helps to open those pathways back up to one another. We cannot connect and bond and be intimate when there's a breeding ground for resentment and bitterness and being closed off, for being
Hmm.
untrusting of the one person that's supposed to be in our corner. And so forgiveness is essential to having an intimate relationship so that
Hmm.
you can continue that growth and connection. And not only that, but if we think of this from an attachment mindset, we can attach and feel safe and seen if there's this narrative going through our mind that that person's not trustworthy or they hurt us and there's no going back to them now. Like that actually breaks the attachment that we have securely with them. And so it's very important for us to be able to go through the steps to navigate forgiveness. And that might be with a professional, that might be with a pastor,
Hmm.
but it's so essential and honestly one of the more important ones of these five, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. The thing for me, the perspective I have is that if I have unforgiveness and I choose not to forgive either myself or whomever's wronged me, I'm really putting my feet in the shoes of God, and they don't really fit. You know, if God's forgiven me or if God's forgiven the person, who am I to bear that weight of unforgiveness? You know?
Exactly. So well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in my article, I outline a few tips to like
Mm-hmm.
things that might make forgiveness a little bit easier. Certainly, if the offense is, a little bit lighter than something like a betrayal or infidelity, then it might be easier to forgive. So I have a few things outlined in my article to help with that. And like I said, we could probably spend a lot of time here. So if the viewers are ever interested, we'd love to hear if this would be a topic for the future.
Right. I'm sure it is. So let's get into the last one.
Sexual satisfaction, right? How
Mm-hmm.
can we have an intimate relationship with our partner without this important, piece of the relationship?
Right.
Sexual satisfaction and physical intimacy, because we think of intimacy on a scale, there's multiple facets of intimacy, but this one is sexual and physical. And it's the part that separates our relationship from just a friendship or cohabiting with a best friend. This is the sacred act of connecting and sharing vulnerability and closeness in a physical and sexual way as God designed and ordained within the confines of a healthy marriage. And research finds there's this back and forth among sexual satisfaction and good communication and closeness. Sometimes we wonder in the research, well, does a couple with good communication have a better sex life? Because they find that that can correlate together. But then there's the question of, well, if you're sexually satisfied and you're engaging together, doesn't that mean that you can have a good, close relationship with great communication? So it's kind of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. At the end
Right.
of the day, they're very important and they go hand in hand. And we can't talk about an intimate relationship that can go the distance, that can be guarded and protected from outside distractions and temptations if sexual satisfaction is not present right here in the relationship, in the marriage.
Whew, that's so good. Really good. So let's maybe talk to somebody who's struggling maintaining intimacy in their marriage relationship. What's a final piece of advice you'd give to someone?
Yes. So I think every relationship at some point in their life, because we're human and we're not perfect,
Hmm.
they will be struggling and feeling like they're starting to tap into that autopilot phase. So the advice that I would give is say you're not alone. The
Hmm.
life that we live together is going to feel like a little roller coaster. There's going to be the ups and downs. Hold your ground. Get yourself rooted in what God's truth is for you and your partner and how like you came together and the love you share. Go back to those early days of what drew you together. Go back to some of these strategies, see what you might be missing, see what you can practically employ. And don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help, whether that's a counselor at MCO or somewhere near you, or whether that's through mentors in your church or just with your partner, right? That's the
Hmm.
best place to be able to open up and to share and let them know, like, hey, I'm missing our connection. I'm missing the intimacy we once had. And I know we just need to figure this out together. Like, who better to go to than your partner that is sharing all of this with you? So I would
Right.
just really like to affirm all those couples out there to say, like, go the distance. There's going to be ups and downs. It's not a straight linear path all the time, but you've got this. You're rooted, and the Lord has provided all the resources out there to help you have a successful and healthy, intimate relationship.